Hello class, my name is Jordan Portillo. I am doing my presentation on chapter 16, which is bilingual books and labels. I'm currently not teaching a class right now, but I am getting my single subject credential in science, and I would like to teach any grade from 7th to 12th grade. So to begin, bilingual books and labels, they are written in two or more languages, including English, which help validate, represent home languages. Books and labels written in home language are meant to bridge opportunity gaps for our students. They provide all students the opportunities to be exposed to multiple ways of expressing thoughts and value systems. And lastly, bilingual books and labels include other strategies in order to promote comprehension. So what I mean by that is even though the obvious is going to be presenting bilingual books and labels in the class, so that would be alternative text depending on what the language is and depending on what students in their need. So this is a science class, and a lot of those books will be gauged towards science-based topics. And depending on the grade level, we will be talking about certain scientific subjects. So certain books would be presented in both English and Spanish, and of course the other languages that are going to be in the class. And the labeling is going to be necessarily items in the classroom that will be used regularly and are kind of just seen regularly and are going to be labeled so students can see English version and the Spanish version. So the step-by-step strategy in order to implement bilingual books and labels. So first, like I said, we're going to be identifying what languages and different cultures are represented in the classroom. So this means just pretty much seeing, who's Spanish speaking, who's Mandarin speaking, who's Punjabi, and just all, of course, the different languages that are in a classroom. And we'll be pronouncing and labeling common objects. So this could be a task that you do with the classroom or a task that maybe you do beforehand, but essentially, as spoken about earlier, you're going to be just labeling classroom items. So that could be things from very simple items like door, window, pencil, whiteboard, TV screen, all that stuff. But because it's a science class, it will be more specialized stuff like microscope, and it'll be just things used in the lab that will make sure we'll have labeled correctly, and things that they'll be using, goggles, coats, and just a little bit of everything in the classroom that they'll be using. So third, we'll be providing bilingual books and resources. So this is also going to be just books of two different languages. Some may be written in both English and Spanish, but specifically stuff that students will read about in class or get exposed to in class, and then there'll be books that are in their home language that they'll be able to use and reflect on and use as resources. And providing translation will be used through the books, the labelings, and then also face-to-face conversations if they need help with specific terms, or also finding the correct resources for them to make sure they're getting translations for tougher terms and tougher vocabulary. And lastly, it's going to be exploring key vocabulary in several languages. So this pretty much means students who are not English language learners, they will also be being exposed to the secondary language as much as the English language learners are. So pretty much English speakers will be kind of being exposed to their new language, as well as Spanish speakers will be being exposed to their new language. So next, I have a couple examples of how the labeling would look like. So for instance, some of these items are going to be things used in the classroom, but they may just be on the walls, or they may just be somewhere where the students have visual access to them. But some of the more hands-on things will be actually labeled so they can physically see and have a visual representation of what the English term is, what the Spanish term is, and then, as stated earlier, obviously if there are other languages in the class, we'll be labeling those as well. Some of these are just cool ones I like. So recycling, this is a scientific method, and then of course these are things we'll be using in the classroom. So certain strategies that we could be implementing, as stated earlier, and some of the characteristics of what this strategy is. So with the class, we could label as many items as we can in both English, Spanish, or the other languages. And this could be used as a kind of an assessment for the teacher to figure out where the students are, and also to figure out what languages are in the classroom, and then where we're going to be going further on. So we're going to allow students to answer questions in home language, but ask them the right ideas and sentences in English after. So this pretty much means if students are having a hard time with expressing their ideas in English, we want them to at least get the comprehension of the idea down. So allowing them to write ideas and answers in their home language would be acceptable, but we still need them to try to express and focus on the new vocabulary that they're working. So maybe using context clues that they've been exposed to before, and that will allow them, as the subject and as the quarter goes on, to be able to answer those type of questions in the second language. So also color coordinating labels if there are multiple languages. So as stated earlier, let's just say we have 3 languages. We may want to label things in multiple languages so students know, hey, that label is a certain language, and so forth. And lastly, providing opportunities for students to engage and create a group in creative or group assignments. So this just means once we have that assessment down, we can go forward and maybe have students being exposed to other students at higher or lower levels, and also making assignments just fun and different so they're not being so redundant and being so repetitive with what they're trying to learn. So with those resources and books that we would have, these are a couple that our book talked about. So the first 2 are kind of science-based books that are bilingual, and let's just say if we were learning about the anatomy of flowers, or we're learning about trees or something, there would be books available for them so they can go back and use as resources to reflect on and be able to maybe get the necessary information that they missed to be able to use that into their answers and their discussions. And the third book is maybe something that we would also have in the classroom, but it's more of a representation of who the author is. I believe her name is Monica Brown. She is well known in books that are bilingual, and I think having something like her books in the classroom would maybe just be a little more maybe something easier to read, but something students have been exposed to before in the past, or something that they would be more relatable to. So some strengths and challenges I have. The first strength I have is students can use home language or their first language to support their understanding of the information. So that allows students to get the comprehension of the subject down. The second strength would be students get to express or introduce their native culture to their class. So this just allows students to be more expressive and makes them feel, they're representing what's important to them, and it makes them feel like their culture is important, not just necessarily that they're someone who's just a fly on the wall. They're just somebody who's being exposed, or there's somebody who's trying to constantly learn something new and be adapted to a new culture. It's good for the students to express themselves and allow the other classmates to see their culture. And one of the challenges I have would be native English speakers may actually experience difficulty remembering vocabulary in a second language. So obviously we are focused on all students in the classroom, not just English language learners, but specialized learning sometimes involves everybody being exposed to that learning environment. So sometimes students may feel as much as EL students might, that this is difficult and they're having troubles remembering the vocab. But we need to remember that these are similarities and struggles that both students have, and this should build a cohesive community in our classroom and also outside the classroom. So some more benefits for the English language student. Bilingual books and labels help develop vocabulary in multiple languages. So obviously seeing more specific terms, as obviously science class, help them develop their science vocabulary in English and Spanish. Helps to familiarize students with academic language. Students feel welcomed and included in the classroom environment, as stated earlier, about their culture and their background history. Increases the social awareness and social skills. Students may be social and may want to meet new friends and may want to tell stories and tell about their past, but maybe struggle with the actual language and actual verbal skills to do so. And lastly, helps to promote quality writing. So students, obviously, we know the more we read, the better writers will become. The same works for English language learners, and language they need to learn to develop to write better in English. Obviously, they're going to learn if they can slowly start reading better as well. So in conclusion, The use of bilingual books and labels encourages students to value other cultures and languages. So also obviously their own language, but other cultures and other languages, and it helps everybody to improve the quality of their education. Students feel validated through the use of home language in the classroom and study of their culture. Bilingual books and labels help to create context clues for foreign vocabulary. So I stated earlier, sometimes if they know the context clues to look for in writing their answers in English, that will help them moving forward so they can translate, or they could better process something in Spanish and use those context clues to answer questions in English when they're moving forward in their studies. And then lastly, formative, summative assessment and other strategies can help gauge effectiveness. So that means pretty much assessing the students before, during, after assignments, and kind of realizing if those strategies are working or if they're effective for the students. And as we know, adapting and changing our lesson plans are always going to be necessary. So that assessment will help us do that and make sure that these strategies are useful for the students in class. Thank you, guys.